Hello, my name's Andy Reid and I lead the International Product Marketing Organisation here at Epicor Software. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. It's always an honour to get to meet those of you that may be interested in hearing a little bit more about how we help our customers. So over the course of the next 15 minutes or so, I want to do a couple of things. First of all, we're going to level set on a few terms, what we really mean by Industry 4.0. Next, we'll be going to look at the core elements that make up Industry 4.0, how they're leveraged in manufacturing, and finally we'll just touch on Industry 5.0. So here at Epicor, our mission is to provide innovative and highly focused industry productivity solutions for the mid-market enterprise in the manufacturing space. We try to go beyond what's offered by conventional enterprise resource management systems that you may know as ERP. A couple of numbers: we've been in business about 50 years now. We've got customers in 150 countries. 27,000 of those customers are being served by about 4,000 employees, just under 4,000. And we've actually seen quite a large shift in recent years towards cloud. So it's about 60% growth through 2020, about the same again through 2021. So we're really seeing a rapid growth towards cloud. So let's just take a look at Industry 4.0, and in particular, I want to take a step back and just look at the links between population and economic growth and what that's meant to manufacturing over the years. So when we say Industry 4.0, we're actually referring to a fourth industrial revolution, although something that's kind of like a fourth stage of the original industrial revolution that we saw. So the first industrial revolution actually happened in the late 1700s and early 1800s, and I've shown that period here as a green vertical stripe, just to sort of the middle left of the chart. And during this time, manufacturing evolved from focusing on manual labour performed by people, aided by animals, to a more optimised form of labour performed by people through the use of water and steam-powered engines and other types of machine tools. Now, prior to that moment, it's quite interesting because the world looked quite different. What you're seeing here is our estimates of GDP, or gross domestic product, and how that was split across the major economies across the world. So each horizontal layer there represents one of the major economies of the world. What you can see is that up until the beginning of the first industrial revolution, the world was pretty much dominated by China and India. And then after that change, Western economies, particularly that of the United States, begin to grow and then surge right up through the 1980s. Since then, of course, we've seen the re-emergence of China and other Asian economies, and this chart runs until 2017, but that trend's continued and even accelerated in the South Asian economies particularly. Now, let's layer in population numbers to that. So in the year 1800, the world population was around 1 billion people. So if you think about that, that's just over 1/8 of the global population today. It then took the next 100 years for this to increase 50% to 1.6 billion people in 1900. And there was a big change in 1928 also. So Alexander Fleming, a doctor in St Mary's Hospital in London, discovered penicillin, which ultimately led to the introduction of antibiotics. So if we look, it's around this time that the world entered its second industrial revolution with the introduction of steel and the use of electricity in factories. And this enabled manufacturers to increase efficiency. And it's during this phase really that we saw mass production concepts like the assembly line introduced as a way to boost productivity. So you might consider this to be a technology revolution. Now, it's also around this point that we see population numbers really starting to surge, which of course increased consumption and totally changed the shape of many global economies. So starting in the late 1950s, the third industrial revolution began to emerge. Manufacturers began incorporating more electronics and eventually computer technology into their factories. So by now, the global population had risen to about 2.5 billion people. So if you consider that for a moment, in just 150 years, global population became 2.5 times larger. But that's nothing compared to the rate of growth that we've seen in the last 75 years. So now in 2022, our global population is just under 8 billion people, more than 3 times the numbers that we had in 1950. So it's no wonder that we're needing technology to help us keep up with the needs of human consumption. This is where the fourth industrial wave is making such a difference. And this revolution is focused around the idea of automation. So in this chart, you can see that rapid growth, and if you look at the dark green shading, that's you can see that the growth isn't going to ease up anytime soon. But the light green shading is showing that growth until around 2100 really. However, the purple line does show us that the rate of growth has at least slowed, but we can expect now world population to be just under 11 billion people by 2100. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, it's because we need to keep up with the demands of the world. We can't do that through traditional means. Now we have to use technology and use it in increasingly advanced ways, and that's what Industry 4.0 is providing. In Industry 4.0, it takes the emphasis on digital technology in recent decades to a whole new level of kind of interconnectivity. It offers a more comprehensive, interlinked and holistic approach to manufacturing, and it's connecting physical and digital for better collaboration across departments, partners, products and vendors. So it's providing much better control for business owners to understand their business and to recognise where they need to make that growth change. Industry 4.0 is all about meeting the needs of today's world, but before we all rush out to go and grab shiny new robots and various technologies, let's consider the cost of not optimizing what you've got today. So you see, each of you has already got a hidden factory. That represents the untapped capacity of your manufacturing plant, the maximum amount of additional production that can be unlocked without capital investment. So fully utilizing your hidden factory means things like around the clock perfect production, manufacturing only good pieces as fast as possible with no downtime every hour of the day. And this term hidden factory was popularized in the 1970s, and it was primarily focused on quality and specifically the waste and costs caused by bad work, much of which is hidden below the surface of day-to-day operations. And the things that could be contributing to your hidden factory are things like cycle inefficiencies that you may not be aware of, unplanned downtime, rework potentially caused by human error, and of course quality issues. And it's all this inefficiency that's hitting your profits. Parts cost more to produce, the value that you can deliver to customers decreases as follows, so does their satisfaction levels. And it's because of this lack of knowledge of your hidden factory that you're left in a very reactive mode, and you need to be more proactive. So that's where Industry 4.0 can help. And in the last few years, we've seen lots of government-sponsored projects. So it kind of started in Germany, where the goal with this Industry 4.0 project was to look for those efficiencies. But we've seen similar concepts sweep through the world. Within Sweden with Production 2030, with Made in China 2025, and of course in Indonesia, Making Indonesia 4.0. Typically, the common theme is using technology to gain competitive advantage. So moving on then, you can see that Industry 4.0 is firstly not only necessary, but also entirely possible with the technology foundations that we have in place today. So let's just look at some of the components of Industry 4.0. So the industrial Internet of Things is the first one, and making sure that we have sensors on infrastructure, on machinery, and around the factory floor enables us to capture this industrial data to understand what's going on at any given point in time. That's causing a lot more data. Big data is data that is fast, that is voluminous, that is very large and has huge variety. That data needs to be stored somewhere, but there's huge amounts of data being generated every second by the technology that we have, particularly from the industrial Internet of Things. Of course, AI, with all this data, we need to look for patterns in the data. That's what machine learning does for us. Looks like artificial intelligence, but really it's just looking for those patterns and helping the individuals make better business decisions off the back of it. Digital twins is representing the technology that we have via a digital version, be it on an iPad or another tablet, or via a computer that may be many miles away from the actual equipment, and that's helping us monitor performance but also make repairs or changes from distance. So digital twins have become very important. M2M is machine-to-machine communication, and it's sometimes possible to have the technology to talk to each other, and provide that interface between two different technology types so that they can optimize processes without putting undue stress on any of the components involved. Digitization, taking some of those communications, be they paper-based or verbal, and digitizing them so that we can monitor them and optimize them and be aware of what's happening over time and look through records of that communication over time. The smart factory are those factories that embrace Industry 4.0 components and allow us to really leverage all of these elements. Cloud computing, as I mentioned, is an essential part of all of this to allow us to capture this data and have a source for processing at scale without needing to look at that aging server in the corner of the factory. Cloud computing provides scale instantly. Of course, the ability to capture and process this data in real time, and as I say, with so much data coming in, we need huge capacity to be able to do so, rather than the old-fashioned batch processing. The ecosystem as well, we live in a hyper-connected world. It's not just the data within your business, it's the data within your customers' businesses or the suppliers of the technology. This flow of information, particularly around things like environmental standards or recipes in certain products, needs to flow from one provider to the consumer. So that ecosystem becomes very important. Cyber physical systems, the introduction of robots that are helping individuals to do their jobs. And of course blockchain, this distributed ledger system that will underpin many of the transactions and smart contracts of the future. So with all of this going on, do we really need Industry 5.0? And what's interesting is there's still disagreement about what Industry 5.0 is. So before speaking to you today, I actually asked a few of my colleagues, and there was sort of broad agreement that it's something to do with humans and machines, but not really clarity over what that meant exactly. So I like to fall back on the official definition that is provided currently by the European Commission. So they look at Industry 5.0 as placing the well-being of the worker at the centre of the production process, to use new technologies to provide prosperity beyond jobs and growth, whilst respecting the production limits of the planet. So what's really interesting here is that it thinks about growth and prosperity, but not at the cost of individuals and the resources available that the planet can provide, and being very aware of the kind of the sustainable nature of those in order to keep businesses growing and not damaging the environment around us. Okay, so just a quick refresh then. This is where we're at. These are the kind of the phases of the Industrial Revolution, and we're sort of somewhere tucked between 4 and 5 at this point. Hopefully that was interesting, and you're starting to think now about how those components of Industry 4.0 affect your business. So please do think about what those components are. Get comfortable with the various components of Industry 4.0 and ask yourselves if you're able to leverage all of those today to try and escape this scenario of the hidden factory. Making sure you're optimizing what you have, but then introducing the technologies to make sure you can become even more efficient. If you haven't done so already, to facilitate some of those transitions. And of course, finally, do reach out to Epicor if you need any help in doing so. Thank you very much. Please, as I say, do enjoy the rest of the sessions. It's a wonderful agenda today, and thank you for allowing me to introduce this phase of the day.